It's currently 11:14 p.m. I currently have some fettuccine that my dad's mom made with some Italian sausage my dad made and then cut up into it. And as a beverage, I have a plastic glass full of tap water currently. As the only other beverage available currently is some sweet tea my dad made. And I'm not really interested in that. As a sugary beverage isn't really suitable for a keto diet, which I've been trying to follow more in recent days when I've been at my mom's place. What I've done most recently is to start editing the July 3, my dinner video in Camtasia. Despite waking up at 7 in the morning to an alarm I set on my laptop using a third-party website, after going to bed around 2:30 in the morning and falling asleep within 15 minutes. Throughout today, I haven't really felt tired. I only recall feeling just a little bit tired. I would just say a bit sluggish during my shift at Wegmans, which was from 8 in the morning to 4:30 p.m. I only recall feeling a little sluggish about a few hours into my shift. I recall during the first few hours of my shift, I primarily restocked the front sections of the produce department, generally restocking first plastic zip bags of grapes, then plastic bags of apples, from cardboard boxes I got from the section of the employees only warehouse for those who work in the produce department. And then I restocked the citrus section of the produce department, restocking varieties of oranges, such as oranges and clementines and Cara Cara navel oranges, which were all bagged, along with some bulk limes and lemons. I took my first 15-minute break around noon. And by that I mean within a few minutes. Afternoon was when I started my first 15-minute break. A coworker I view as a supervisor. He had me restock those sections, the front sections, and then the citrus section of the produce department during the first few hours of my shift. And then I would have taken my 30-minute lunch roughly from 2:30 p.m. to 3 p.m., but I ended up taking it more towards 2:45 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. as a few minutes prior to when I initially planned on starting my 30-minute lunch. Another male coworker that is a manager had me restock regular watermelons at this area. Technically isn't part of the produce department. It's just part of a front display at a entrance between the main part of the supermarket and the intermediate area where you'll generally find our shopping carts unless they've recently been used. A Coinstar machine and some merchandise. Generally things like cardboard, box cases of aluminum cans of sparkling water, and varieties of trail mix, either in plastic jars or plastic bags. I did this a few times during my shift. In those cases, I used a hand jack to transport one of the large cardboard octagonal containers that are used for storing and transporting either regular watermelons or mini seedless watermelons. I transported one of those containers on a wooden pallet using a hand jack from the section of the employees only warehouse for those who work in the produce department to that area I described earlier, where there were two open flat displays for regular watermelons pretty close to each other. A hand jack is essentially the equivalent of a hand tool or manual forklift. You use a bit of physical effort by pumping the lever to lift up the forks, then pull to move the hand jack away from the employees only warehouse and push it to bring it back there. And the last time I did that was what resulted in me taking my 30-minute lunch roughly 15 minutes later than I usually would otherwise. During my 30-minute lunch, I had a pre-made by Wegmans garden salad that I brought over from my mom's place to my dad's place. I had that with an aluminum can of True Energy. And prior to that, roughly during the first 3 to 4 hours of my shift, I had a cup of plain coffee brewed from a Wegmans generic Keurig pod. From the break room. Then cooler water. Then another cup of plain coffee. All of which I sipped at from the same paper cup. Also from the break room. While working. Towards the end of my shift, I did what I usually restock, which is the banana section and hard item section of the produce department. Though I recall restocking the banana section of the produce department a few times throughout my shift. Only double stacking to not leave a open, partially full banana box. At one point while doing that, a passing female customer got my attention to request just the top of one of the empty banana boxes, in this case one that was on the banana runner on the floor at the time, as in the banana runner was within the public main part of the supermarket at the time. And I accepted that request for just the top of an empty banana box, as I never heard anywhere that I shouldn't do that. I took my second and last 15-minute break today around 4 p.m. And when my dad picked me up from the Wegmans I work at after my shift, in the front passenger seat where I pretty much always sit, was a close male friend of my dad. And when my dad picked me up, right away he drove to the Salvatore's we always go to, as there was a low-key retirement party for a distant male friend of my dad. Distant to the point where today was the first time I saw him in years. As such, I saw a combination of close friends of my dad that we see pretty regularly, and distant friends of my dad that I saw regularly many years ago, but today was the first time I saw them in years. I recall I made some conversation prioritizing the distant friends of my dad. A close female friend of my dad that works at the Salvatore's where the retirement party was, made some popsicles, most likely using a combination of frozen fruit and some kind of dairy-based product. At 2 points, I tried 2 different molds of those popsicles, and it didn't matter what shape the popsicle was on its plastic stick. The popsicle itself, in both cases, was fruity and delicious. They both tasted the same. I recall primarily raspberries were used for those popsicles. I recall we were there roughly from 4:45 p.m. to about 8:30 p.m., during which time I had 2 alcoholic beverages, the shot of the month, Hawk in full glass form as I requested, and then after sipping at that, through a straw I sipped at a blue Hawaiian cocktail, and then I just sipped at glasses of the equivalent of more than one glass of iced water. I recall having roughly 6 squares from a sheet pizza of cup char, pepperoni, and sausage on the default red or marinara base. Me and my dad got an order of fried dough to go, and I had some of an order of sausage zingers that same close male friend of my dad that sat in the front passenger seat got. I enjoyed trying that new thing. It had a good savory taste, and it came with a little plastic tub of, I would say, sweet and sour sauce for dipping, of which I used my metal fork to dip each piece of sausage into the sweet and sour sauce until that ran out. And then I just had those pieces of sausage plain until I decided to have no more. It was a low-key retirement party. Essentially just the friends of that distant male friend of my dad the retirement party was for, gathering around one of the round tables of the dining area of the Salvatore's me and my dad always go to, and initially it was planned that we would only stay there for an hour, 2 hours at most. But ultimately, I'm glad that I went with my dad to that retirement party at the Salvatore's we always go to. It was nice getting to see people from my past that I hadn't seen in years and making some conversation with them about what I'm doing currently and what they're doing currently. Around 7 in the morning at my dad's place, I had with my first cup of plain coffee today half of a raspberry cronut my dad got from the Salty Bread Pizza Cafe the other day. At one point while at Salvatore's, after asking a female member of the group of friends of the distant male friend of my dad for who the retirement party was for, are those fried mushrooms? She confirmed that and then offered me one, and I accepted and dipped it in the provided little black plastic tub of ranch dressing. At one point during my shift at Wegmans, I was in the back, or the employees only warehouse, and while loading up my designated cart for today's shift, my left foot went through the gap between 2 rubber pallets, and when I pulled my foot out, it pulled the shoe off, but thankfully my left foot is perfectly fine. It's just that my ankle on that foot is currently a bit sore whenever inward pressure is applied, but it's otherwise perfectly fine, and I was able to walk on my feet perfectly fine, and it didn't affect my performance working during my shift for the produce department at Wegmans.